Now to Georgia, and lawmakers have approved a second reading of a controversial foreign agents law. Now, this requires media and civil groups that receive more than 20% of their funding from abroad to register as being under foreign influence. Protesters confronted police outside Parliament in the capital, Tbilisi. They say the bill would restrict basic freedoms and is similar to a law being used to silence government critics in Russia. Large protests against the legislation have become a regular occurrence in the country. Our correspondent, Maria Katamadze, joins us from Tbilisi. Welcome, Maria. What's happening there now?
Protesters are still coming to the Parliament Square. We can see families, people with loved ones coming here and waving European and Georgian flags. They feel very disappointed by the ruling parties, by the Parliament's decision to adopt the law, the bill in the second hearing. But people say that they're going to protest further. At this point, the riot police left the area after vacating MPs from the Parliament building. Before the Parliament building was encircled essentially by the protesters, they were demanding to meet those MPs who voted in favor of the bill. Lots of disappointment, lots of anger and uncertainty about their future. They say that they're very worried how their future in Europe is going to look like. Some say that this foreign agent bill is going to make them now friends with Russia. That's what we heard from some of the protesters. And yes, at this point, it's still a developing picture here in Georgia, because the bill, in order to become a law, it has to be adopted in the third final hearing.
OK, so now that it has been approved twice of those three times, is there any way that protesters can still stop it?
Well, as we have seen, the mass protest didn't stop the government from adopting the bill in the first two hearings. So it's quite unlikely that the mass protests or the international pressure, for instance, will push the government to drop the bill, as they did last year. For instance, we can see that the rising anti-Western rhetoric towards the Brussels. Georgian government says that they can act independently without looking at what says Washington or Brussels. They also said that it was essential for Georgia to have transparent funding from the overseas, but critics say that it's actually the bill would be used to crack down on dissent, to limit opposition capabilities, to silence the oppositional media as well, just right before the elections in October 2024, and that election actually can make a difference when we discuss this bill, because the opposition says that if it comes to the power, they will retry this bill. So if for instance, the next elections are won by the same ruling Georgian party, the bill will stay in place.
All right, we're having a couple of technical difficulties. We'll try another question and see if we can get past these technical difficulties. Maria, could you please explain to us why this legislation is so concerning to people there?
Well, it's important to actually look at this bill in the context of the relationships between Russia and Georgia. They fought a war in 2008, and Russian troops are still in Georgia's breakaway regions of South Ossetia and Abkhazia. So everything that could be seen as Russia-related is taken very cautiously and very sensitively here by the Georgians. More than 80% of Georgians want to be part of Europe, and they think in order to be a country in the EU and prosperous country, they need to drift away as much as possible from Russia. That's what the protesters are telling me here at the square.
Let's cross over now to William Courtney in Washington. He's an adjunct senior fellow at the RAND think tank and also served as U.S. ambassador to Georgia. So, Mr. Courtney, do you think that these protesters have a chance of moving the government to reject this bill?
It is probably too late to reject the bill because the government is planning to do a third and final reading very soon. But the protests may have a wider effect in Georgia. Clearly, the vast number of Georgians want to go west. They want to go to Europe. The government, though, is hijacking its power and trying to take Georgia closer to Russia. This foreign agents law, which has been one of Vladimir Putin's most powerful tools of oppression in Russia, now could be used by the government to do the same thing in Georgia. That's a step very far back.
And of course, this is not the first time Georgia's ruling party has introduced this bill. Why are they pushing it again this year if it has already been defeated once?
It's consistent with the direction that the Georgian leadership wants to take the government, and they need to find a way in their conception to repress civil society organizations that have foreign ties. And almost all civil society organizations in Georgia have foreign ties of one sort or another. So the government sees this as essential to turning the government into a more authoritarian regime.
But we do have a rather unique situation where Georgian President Zorbayev has been highly critical of the bill and vowed to veto it if it passes. So does that mean that the ruling party could still box it through even if she does put in her veto?
Yes, the parliamentary speaker with enough votes could override her veto. So she is doing the right thing, but she doesn't have enough power to stop it altogether. So in some sense, what we're seeing now in Georgia is a second, what is called color revolution. You know, Ukraine had two color revolutions, the Orange Revolution in 2005, and then the Maidan Revolution in 2014. For these countries coming out of communist rule, maybe it takes a couple popular revolutions in order to, and these are peaceful revolutions, to change politics. Georgia looks like it's in the same situation now. It had one over a decade ago, and now it looks like it could be on the cusp of another revolution that might make Georgia a different kind of government.
Well, that's something that the EU chief Ursula von der Leyen would definitely agree with. She condemned police violence and said that Georgia is at a crossroads now. Would you agree with that? And if so, do we see any indication as to which side is actually going to win?
She is absolutely correct. It's too hard to tell. Typically in popular revolutions, some part of the security apparatus has to lose faith in the existing rule and go over to the other side, the side of the popular demonstrators. That hasn't happened yet in Georgia, but that has been something that's happened in some of the other color revolutions. So we don't yet see this happening, but it could happen anytime, and we just can't predict.
We can now talk to Rachel Denber, Deputy Director of the Europe and Central Asia Division of Human Rights Watch. She joins us from New York. So Rachel, help us walk through this. Why are so many Georgians taking to the streets, and why are we seeing such a harsh crackdown?
Georgians are taking to the streets in mass numbers, unprecedented numbers. These are numbers that we have never seen before out on the streets in Georgia, because this law aims to take Georgia back several decades in terms of freedom of expression, and freedom of association. It wants to. The government has made clear that the intent is to turn away from its growing integration with the European Union. It aims to turn away from the West generally. It is doing this under the pretext of this law that claims that it's about transparency of the funding for NGOs and media and the like. It's not about transparency. Where NGOs and media in Georgia get their funding is very clear. Anyone can find that out. This law is about smearing, stigmatizing, and demonizing organizations that are independent and that might be critical of the government, and everybody knows that. And the government has pretty much made clear that it's aware of this, and the government has made clear that it intends to use this law to silence and punish its critics.
So then you would agree with the assessment, as the protesters have said, that this bill would have a similar effect to a Russian law, which is often used to silence critics of the government. Do you agree with that assessment?
I think that there are some differences between the Georgian foreign agent law and the Russian foreign agent law. Well, the Georgian law is not called foreign agent; they call it foreign influence, but it's the same idea, and it's been brought out with absolutely the same purpose. So yeah, I think that the government has made very clear that this law is only the first in what will be a number of steps to silence its critics. The behind-the-scenes political leader, Ivanishvili, has made that very clear in his speech. The prime minister also made that very clear in his speech. They intend to use this law to silence what they call bad projects and NGOs that they don't like.
Now, we've already seen this bill being withdrawn once. Do you think there's any chance that the protesters can get their way and actually stop it being heard by Parliament again?
Well, the government seems very determined to push this law through. We can hope that it will get the message that this law will almost certainly derail Georgia's European integration. Georgia's European integration is something that the vast majority of Georgians want. 90% in public polling show that Georgians want Georgia to continue towards European integration, towards becoming remaining a candidate country for EU status. This law would, unquestionably would derail that. So, one can hope that the government will come to its senses, but it seems quite determined. So I think that we are in for some rocky days ahead.
Yes, well, if those pictures we were seeing just now are anything to judge by, we definitely are. That was Rachel Denber from Human Rights Watch. Thank you very much for your assessment.
Thank you.